Hi, I'm Paul Gertner. Welcome to my Unshuffled Kicker. This is the trick that I performed on Penn and Teller Fool Us. And yes, I actually fooled them with a trick they already knew the secret to. You see, Penn and Teller saw me perform Unshuffled many years ago, over 40 years ago, when we were both appearing in Atlanta. They were performing in a theater show, but it was in the church basement at the time, and I was doing one of my very first trade shows. And we got together at a coffee shop after the show with a couple other magicians, and we shared some tricks with each other. And Unshuffled was one of the tricks I showed them that evening. Now, about 25 years later, I got an email from Penn. They were already big, famous celebrities by that time. And he said he wanted to buy my book, Steel and Silver, for the purpose of learning how to do the trick Unshuffled. He said that he was working on learning the Pharaoh Shuffle with the help of Mike Close at the time, and he remembered Unshuffled as being one of the best card tricks he's ever seen, which was a great compliment, and he wanted to learn how to do it. Now then, about a couple of years ago, I got a call from Penn and Teller Fool Us, and the producers told me that they wanted this trick on the show. Now, I knew there was no way I could fool them with a trick they already knew the secret to. So I spent a little time. Well, let me correct that. I spent a lot of time. And I came up with the gimmick and the method you now have in your hands. It's called Paul Gertner's Unshuffled Kicker. Now, it did the job. It fooled Penn and Teller on the show, but not only that, it also fooled the lay audiences and magicians alike. In fact, I think right now we're probably up to well over 3 million views and thousands of comments of people guessing how the trick is done. And to be honest, not one single person has nailed the exact method that you now hold in your hand. There was one engineer and one physicist that watched very close, frame by frame, and they came as close as anybody did, but still didn't know exactly how I got the words Penn and Teller to appear on the side of the deck. So I can safely say, if you follow the instructions, you will have a trick that will fool just about anybody. So I hope you like it.
Thank you. Allison, would you mind joining me at the table? I have a trick that you've never seen before, and I want you to see it up close.
I would love to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, Penn and Teller, it's a pleasure to be here, and I brought something special to show you. It might even look a little familiar, because I brought a deck of marked cards. You see, Allison, Penn and Teller know an awful lot about marked cards, and they would tell you that, of course, most magicians mark the cards on the back. However, I mark them a little differently. I mark them on the edge. Yeah, see, you can see on the edge of the deck, it's like a little pattern, like a barcode pattern. There's information there, you just don't know how to read it. And I'm gonna teach you right now.
Oh, thank you.
Now, I actually marked each card with this permanent marker. And that's important because each card has a unique code on it, but it's permanent, and I can't alter it or change it in any manner. Now, if you take a look at the cards, Allison, I want you to confirm for everybody that all the cards are mixed up. In other words, they're not all the red cards here and black cards here.
Yes.
It's a shuffled pack of cards, right?
Yes.
And I'm going to begin by actually having you select a card.
Okay.
So now this works with any card in the deck. So I want you to choose one at random, so just say stop as I riffle the pack.
Stop.
Okay. Look at the card. Remember the name of the card. Okay, and we'll let Penn and Teller see it. I'm going to place it in the pack. And normally at this point in a card trick, the magician squares up the deck and shuffles the card. Right, guys? Yeah, that's Magic 101. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give these cards what we call an unshuffle. Now, it's the opposite of a shuffle. In fact, if you take a close look right here, I'm going to show you that you can see it looks like a shuffle, it sounds like a shuffle, but it's actually an unshuffle. And if you watch the marks on the edge of the deck, you'll see it starting to read unshuffled 4 times on the side of the pack. See? Because I've actually unshuffled these cards into 4 different groups. Hearts, clubs, spades, and diamonds, the 4 suits in the deck. Yeah. But if I give the cards another unshuffle, just like this, and you can see when I give the cards an unshuffle, it looks like a shuffle, it sounds like a shuffle, but it's not. That's an unshuffle. And in fact, take a look, it's now starting to read unshuffled 2 times on the side of the deck. because I've now separated all the high cards from all the low cards. Yeah. But it gets even more interesting if I give the cards one more unshuffle. And if I do it, I want you to stare at the edge of the deck and see if you can tell the moment that these cards become unshuffled. Now. Oh, but Allison, if it says unshuffled, I have to prove it. Remember in the beginning I showed you they were all mixed up? Take a look at them now, because from the ace through the king of hearts, of clubs, of diamonds, of spades, it's a completely unshuffled deck of cards. Thank you. Wow. Thank you. Now, oh, wait. There's one minor detail. In the beginning, you selected a card.
Yeah.
And it's somewhere here in this unshuffled deck. Now, I could look for your card face up, but they're all in sequence. Perfect order. That wouldn't be too difficult to find, and besides, it probably wouldn't fool Penn and Teller. But if I found your card face down, it would be a little more impressive. For the first time, tell me and everyone else, what was the name of your card?
The King of Spades.
If I give the cards one more unshuffle, and if I rearrange almost every card in the pack, except for the top and bottom cards, I think I can hit it. And I did. There it is, your King of Spades. Thank you. Thank you. Oh. Penn and Teller?
Yes.
Penn, I think it's pretty clear at this point. I can find any card in this deck I want to find. And I can also put these cards in almost any order I want them. Look, if I give them one more unshuffle, take a look at now. The cards have been separated, all the red cards and all the black cards. So there's really only one final question to answer, and that is, did I fool Penn and Teller? Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Gertner. That is incredible. Oh my God. Now, that is a trick that you know Penn has asked you about or read your book about?
That's the tricky part. Penn bought my book a number of years ago to learn that trick. In fact, I saved his email. I still have his email.
Oh, that's so cool. So you did a trick that you know Penn knows.
Yes, that's true, but there was a little twist at the end that I think might have made them smile.
Okay. And now how do you come up with, like, the little change? Are you just, like, driving down the street and you're like, wait a second, I got it?
That took about 10 days of thinking and about another week of preparation and then another week showing it to the top sleight of hand artist in the world.
Oh, wow.
Okay, on video to say, is this gonna work?
Yes.
Keep my fingers crossed here. I don't know.
All right, that was a wonderful performance. Let's see what Penn and Teller think.
Okay.
Gentlemen, with the notebooks.
I want to say first, before we get to the hard part, I am a huge fan of Paul Gertner's. Huge fan.
Penn, did you hear him? You were deliberating, but he saved your email that you wrote him years ago.
Well, I did buy the book from him and worked forever, and I'm not going to even give one word of how that's done because he knows that I read the book, and he knows I worked on it, and I think he also knows I failed. I never got good enough at it to perform it. But I'm not dead yet. Okay. I'm going to keep working. So it's only the ending we're talking about. When the Penn and Teller comes into view at the end, it kind of blew our minds. And we think it's the same deck of cards he started with. I'll also go out with that. We don't think he did anything big and gross on that, even though he's got a table the size of an apartment.
Yeah, that's true. I could have.
We don't think he did anything there. So we then have two choices for what he did, and I'm going to ask this in two different ways. One is, can we look at the cards?
Can you mean look at the cards that
you used? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they'll tell you something, but not all of them. Sure.
Because we think I'll tell you before this.
Look at Teller's face.
Well, it says Penn and Teller
inspecting the props
pretty clearly, and if we do that, and we do that,
Teller looks
we
very
get nothing,
excited.
and we do this.
Hello.
Yeah, well, actually, it does. We did learn something from this deck. I don't know if you can see the angle on this, Paul, but if you look, I don't want to screw up your whole deck, but if I do a shuffle like this, I want you to just watch the edge. I think you'll see it come into focus. It says, Paul Gertner, you fooled us. Can you see that? Can you see that? Let me get the exact right angle. Can you see the right angle? Amazing. Beautiful.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Thanks, Ken.
Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Gertner.
So, before you open up the package and begin to play with the kicker gimmick, I hope you will carefully watch this video first. The gimmick is very well made, but it requires special care and handling to keep it working in good order. So please, leave it in that little plastic sealed package until you watch everything I have to say on this DVD. It's very important to avoid damaging the gimmick if you don't know exactly how to use it. Okay, now, chances are, if you're watching this DVD, you already performed the trick Unshuffled, or at least you're familiar with the trick. And if this is your first exposure to Unshuffled, then you need to learn the classic routine first. And the first step is to make a custom Unshuffled deck. Now, my professional handmade Unshuffled decks are handmade by me. They're also available on my website at Gertner.com. But if you're going to make your own, let me show you how. First, you take a brand new deck of cards, okay? Now, of course, I've already marked them up. And you got a stack of books or DVDs. Check to make sure that the cards are in a certain order. They're ace through king of spades, then ace of diamonds through the king of diamonds, king of clubs through the ace of clubs, and finally the king of hearts through the ace of hearts. So, if we turn them face down, the top card is going to be the ace of hearts, and the bottom card is going to be the ace of spades. And once you have the cards in this position, you're going to square them up, and you're going to place a couple rubber bands very tightly around the deck. And then you're going to take them on the top of the table and square them down so that they're as flat as possible here. Okay? Now, what you're going to actually do is use some books or DVDs. This is just to give your hand a little writing supplement here to hold it. And you're going to pencil in the word Unshuffled in bold block letters, just like that. Now, once you do it on that side, you're going to take and ink it in with a Sharpie marker. Now, I should point out, it's spacing that's the most difficult. So you want to do it a few times and get it perfect so you have Unshuffled written there in nice spaced out, and then you're going to ink it in with a marker. Now you're going to use a permanent Sharpie marker, but the key to it is not to use one that's brand new. If it's a brand new marker, it's too much ink coming out of the marker. And what I like to do is I like to, number one, take and flatten it on the table a little bit, writing on a piece of paper so I get the point a little flat. And I also like to leave it dry out a little bit. So I might even use some markers that are laying around that aren't as brand new. And if I do them, then you get a nice image and you don't get too much bleed onto the cards. If you use a brand new marker, it can bleed onto the edge of the cards, and it doesn't mess up the trick, but it just doesn't look as clean. Okay? So now, once we've written Unshuffled on one side of the deck, we are going to take and slide that rubber band down to the other side, square it up so they're nice and flat, and we're going to write down the name of the card we want right here on this side of the deck. Now, in order to do that, again, I recommend do it in pencil first. You could do King of Spades or Eight of Hearts. They're two of my favorites because of where they're positioned in the deck. And once you've got the King of Spades written, you ink it in with the Sharpie pen, and you now have an unshuffled deck, just like this. Now, there's one more thing we need to do. We need to short the force card, okay? Because we're going to force the King of Spades in this case, and I will take and create a short force card on that, a short corner, I should say, on the King of Spades. Now, the side we're shorting is the side that's closest to me on the left-hand side here. So in other words, if the deck says Unshuffled like that, I'm going to short this side of the king right here. And I do that by just taking a nail clipper and rounding off the corner, or use an emery board and round off the corner. And now we are ready to go. We have a completely unshuffled pack of cards set up, and we're ready to teach to do the trick. Except there's one more thing. You have to set it in action by giving it 5 perfect out pharaohs. Okay? So we'll take a look at those in just a moment. Okay, now, before we perform, of course, we have to put the cards in the proper order. And the way we do that is to give them 5 perfect out pharaohs. Now, the interesting thing is, you are always breaking the cards at the same points each time, so eventually you'll memorize these 5 break points. But I'll mention them right here. And we start by breaking it at the king of clubs, okay, and giving it a perfect out pharaoh, just like that. That's the first one, okay? And now the next break point would be the ace of diamonds, and we give it another perfect out pharaoh, just like that. The next break point is the 7 of clubs, okay? And this, of course, is what you're doing when you're setting up the trick. So if you're doing strolling magic, you do have to go in a corner and set 5 pharaoh shuffles, or have a couple extra decks set up. And the next break point is the 4 of diamonds, okay? And I missed it by 1, but now we hit it perfect, okay? Always check very carefully, okay? And make sure that you don't go too fast at this process, because if you make a mistake on this last one, 9 of spades, and you don't notice that mistake, you have big problems during the show, okay? So I want to make sure I hit it perfect, and we did. And now, if we were to look very carefully, and I can spread them a little bit and you can sort of see, it says unshuffled 8 times there. It's very difficult to see. It just looks like a random jumbled pattern, but we are now ready to do the trick. And of course on this side it says king of spades 8 times, but no one ever really knows that information is back there. And because we shorted the corner, I can run my thumb up the deck and immediately cut to the king of spades, which is the force card for this deck. So for now, we're going to put this deck aside here for a moment, and we'll get back to that in a moment. I also like to put a little marked card sign on the box, and that goes in the box and closed up. We'll put these aside and we'll get back to them in a moment. But now I want to share with you a little bit about what you're probably excited to see, this kicker that's in your hand and that you have. Now let's take a look at what you've received with Paul Gertner's Unshuffled Kicker. You have the DVD and instructions. You have the gimmick right here, which is inside here, and it comes in a little package. Now, as I mentioned, I want you to keep it inside this little package. Watch this DVD first, okay? This is not an out-of-the-box trick, okay, that you'll be doing tomorrow. It's going to take some time and preparation on your part to customize it for your performing environment. If you already do Unshuffled, you know that it took some serious time to learn how to do the trick. So please put in the time to learn how to use this gimmick. The kicker does not take as much time to learn as learning how to do pharaoh shuffles, but there are some important preparation and some work that must be done first. So let's get started. Now, this is the gimmick as you receive it. It is a movable magnetic shell, okay, device, which gets added on to the face of the deck during the performance of the trick. Now, the gimmick consists of a magnetic face right here with 3 movable strips, okay? It has a flexible hinge, and it has adhesive on both sides that can be peeled off, and we're going to get access to it. The adhesive is so that you can customize the gimmick depending on the type of cards you use for Unshuffled. See, we know that magicians use many different brands of decks when performing a sleight like the Pharaoh Shuffle, and that it's a very personal choice. Some like traditional cut cards, like bicycles, okay, and they pharaoh nicely from their traditional cuts. They pharaoh from the bottom up, and I personally prefer for pharaoh, I teach the pharaoh from the top down, so I use the phoenix because they pharaoh very well from the top down. And we need to customize this gimmick depending on which cards we're going to use. Okay. Now, if you don't already perform the Pharaoh Shuffle, and you want to consider, you might want to consider my product, which is called Unshuffling the Pharaoh Shuffle. I only mention this because on here is a DVD that gives very, very detailed instructions on the Pharaoh Shuffle. I'm going to teach it to you, but there's more detailed instructions here than we can go into on the DVD you're watching right now. The other thing it includes is a custom hand-lettered marked deck of cards that can be found on my website, Gertner.com. Okay. So let me show you what a customized device looks like. This is a customized device, okay? And this is the one I used on Penn & Teller Fool Us. Now you can see with this gimmick, we can add a third change to the side of the deck. Okay, when I did it on Fool Us, I had the words change one more time, and this side of the deck then read Penn & Teller, just like this. Now, as you can see, this one has been customized for a Phoenix brand deck of cards. And you will see that on the face of the gimmick, right here, I placed an ace of spades from a Phoenix deck. And on the back of the gimmick, I placed the back of the card box and also a side right here of a Phoenix card box. On the gimmick, I have also written the words I want to appear for the third word change, in this case, Penn & Teller. So, before we customize the gimmick, let's look closely and take a look at the gimmick, and I'll show you how to prep and oil the movable magnetic shell. Remember, keep that gimmick inside that little package for the first time you watch these instructions so I can show you how to handle the gimmick without the chance that you might damage it. And then you can go back and take out the gimmick and customize it. And if you watch the DVD again, you'll learn all the little tips that I have to show you. Now, here's the concern is if you don't watch the DVD all the way through, it's possible that you could bend one of these magnetic strips like this. Now, if that does happen, you can, of course, bend it back and get it straight, but I'd prefer you not to ever have that happen. Okay? So the shell is very well made, but as I mentioned, there are some little fragile aspects to the shell. Now, the shell is made of steel with 3 movable strips, and it's resting on a base that's made up of like a magnetic refrigerator magnet. The entire shell adheres to the magnetic base that it's resting on, just like this. When you receive the gimmick, there's a tiny amount of adhesive right on the corner, which holds that on. The great news about the gimmick is whether occasionally it can actually come off, and it's not a problem because you can just simply reattach it because it's magnetic and it stays right in place. It just depends on how we use it and how it functions. So it's not a problem at all. Just put it right back on, just like that, and it works perfectly and it functions either way. Now, the movable shell consists of 3 magnetic strips from the top down. The 2nd, the 4th, and the 6th are strips that actually will slide out about 1/8 of an inch to the side during the setup. This will create what appears to be a jumbled pattern on the side of the deck. So, and when you push the strips back in, the 3 strips magnetically line up perfectly. So, to begin, you first need to oil the movable strips. So depending on how long your gimmick has been in the package, there could be some oxidation underneath the strips. And what you're going to do is you're going to oil them a little bit. You're going to take and use an X-Acto blade, lift underneath the 2nd strip, just like this, and slide up the blade so that you can actually remove that strip. Now, I suggest that when we do this, you mark them and keep them in order, just like that, and so that you can just slide out. The key here is you don't want to bend the strips, okay? And once there's printing on it, you want to kind of keep as much of your fingers off of the writing as you can, because eventually it will fade away a little bit and you'll have to redo it. But notice I've put them in a row, number 2, 4, and 6, okay? Now, so the key point, as I mentioned, just make sure you don't bend them. Just sort of lift them away and slide them out as soon as you get them away using the X-Acto blade. Now, once you've done that, you're going to take some WD-40, okay? And spray a little WD-40 on a cloth and run it along. Now, if there's oxidation on the underneath of the strip, you might see a little brown show up. That's fine. And you're going to essentially oil each one by wiping it on the WD-40. And once that's done, you're ready to put them back in place. Okay? Now, and again, it's important they go in the right order, okay? Because it's very precisely made. And you do not have to slide them all the way. Notice I'm going to leave about 1/8 of an inch just there, and push them down. And you'll notice with the oil they slide much easier, and they fit very precisely. The magnets, of course, hold them there. Now, with them shifted just a little bit, you can see it creates a jumbled pattern. Now, what you're going to do is then you're going to square up the strips, and if you had words written on it already, it would show the words up and it would say Penn and Teller. Now, the key point is once you've squared them up, they may square up, but they may have a little space over here, and that's because everyone's finger is different. And you might not actually, because of the design of your index middle finger, might not push them all the way in. And if they don't, that's okay. Leave it just like that, and that's the position they're going to be in when you write the message on the card. Okay? So, before we get into writing the message on the card, I'm going to show you how we customize the gimmick a couple other ways. The first thing you need to decide is what color close-up pad you're going to be working on. I highly recommend black. You'll see for a number of different reasons. So we're going to color the lip of the gimmick, or the edge of the gimmick, to match your close-up pad. So, assuming that you are going to work on a black close-up pad, you must take a black Sharpie and color the silver edges of the gimmick to match that close-up pad color. You just do this by putting a line along the top and then lay it down on the table and put a line along the inside of the gimmick. This is going to make it a little more deceptive. Now, of course, you can use other color close-up pads, but I can assure you the black, I've tested it out, is the most deceptive. So take my word for it, that's the way to go. Now, you're now going to write the desired message on your gimmick. It can be whatever you want it to be. A second selected card, like the 2 of spades, could be, say, happy birthday, mazel tov. The message you choose is up to you. The words you will write on the third, this will be the message that comes up the third time during the trick. Okay? Now, obviously on Penn and Teller Fool Us, this is the one I used, so I wrote Penn and Teller. And as I squared up the words, I said, did this trick fool Penn and Teller? Now, there are 2 different ways you can go here. You can write a permanent message on the gimmick, which I highly recommend, which means that you use this gimmick for only that one message. To do this, you will use a permanent black Sharpie marker. And this is recommended because it will be easier to work with. The ink will stay on the gimmick. It will not smear as much. I mean, if you're moisture on your fingertips from sweat, eventually it will deteriorate a little bit and you have to touch it up, but it works much better with a permanent message. The downside is that you can only use this gimmick with that message, and if you want a different message, you would need to purchase another gimmick. Alternatively, you can write a temporary message on the gimmick, not recommended, okay, by using an Expo marker, a Vis-a-Vis Expo marker, which would be this one right here. It is a wet erase marker. The benefit is the message can be wiped away using a bottle of wet erase cleaner. And you can put some cleaner on a tissue and you can wipe the message away and use the same gimmick with a different message. Now, the reason I say this is not recommended is because once the words are written with a wet erase marker, they will not be very stable, okay? It will require very careful handling during the performance to keep them from smearing the words on the gimmick. And if you touch the words on the gimmick, they sometimes can come off a little bit on your fingertips, okay, when it's written. But it is possible to do this, and if you're very careful, and if you want to use one gimmick for customizing it occasionally, you won't go through too many performances with the words until you have to wipe them away again and redo them, okay? Now, personally, I find it very difficult to perform the trick when using wet erase markers. Therefore, I recommend going the permanent route with a Sharpie to make the trick easier to perform. Now, once you have decided what to write on the gimmick, you should pencil the words in and determine the spacing. Now, this is very important. Again, we can write different things. You can write happy birthday, happy anniversary, but it's important to take the gimmick and literally pencil the words in first, because once you write them, they're written and they will stay there, okay? And the hardest part is spacing them out. And once you've penciled the letters in like this, you're going to use either your temporary marker or your permanent marker and ink in the letters on the gimmick. The biggest problem most people have is spacing out the letters, and that's why doing it in pencil first is critical. So if you have an artistic friend who's a graphic designer, you might want to get them involved and help them, and they'll help you space it out and write it out in nice, neat form. Okay, I've been doing it for a long time, so it's fairly easy for me to do, but the key point is, if you make a mistake when you're putting the markings on the gimmick with a permanent Sharpie, you can sometimes, if you act very quickly, use WD-40 and some tissue and very quickly wipe that mistake away, wipe it off clean. Now, it will leave a light shadow of the text on the gimmick. It will not come off totally, so be careful not to make a mistake when you are customizing your gimmick with the words. Okay, so now we have to customize the gimmick to match your specific deck of cards. Next, you're going to customize the gimmick to match the cards you use, and you need a card box for your selected deck and a duplicate ace of spades from that deck. Now, you're going to place an ace of spades right here on the face of the gimmick. I recommend that when you're doing this, you actually take the ace of spades from your deck and tap it on the table and split it open. It's not hard to do, okay? It takes a little practice, but you can peel the card open, and cards are made up of 3 different layers, and you're going to peel it so that the thinnest layer is the ace of spades. Okay, there's a reason you want to make this ace as thin as possible. I'll show you why in one of the next steps. Okay, now once you have peeled off your ace of spades, you are going to peel off the shiny paper right here on the face of your gimmick. This is adhesive with carpet tape underneath, and it's ready for you to adhere the ace of spades just like this. We'll peel it off, okay? And you're then going to take your peeled ace of spades. I'm doing this very quickly. I hope it works. I'm very fast on this, and there it is. So you can see it can be done. And you're going to place the ace of spades on the gimmick, okay? Now, I should point out, you are going to align it first on the edges and then align it here so that it's perfectly aligned on the gimmick. I'm not going to do that because I've already customized one right here. Okay? Now, the next part is to customize the other side, and you do that by cutting the box apart. You get the top of the box and a side of the box, and you end up with this. These you don't have to necessarily peel apart, okay? And you then place, and again, you just remove the adhesive on this side, and you line this up right here, and then you line the other part up right here. Now, it's important, I think you should line them from the hinge, and you just want a little bit of the hinge showing, just a little strip of hinge showing between the side of the box and between the top of the box. So if you take a look right here, you can see there's a little bit of hinge showing. It just butts up just about perfectly, but that way I can have it flip up and down 180 degrees. Okay? Now, to ensure the gimmick can move up and down, okay, you can do a little stretching of the gimmick, pushing it like this and pushing it like this. It won't go all the way here because there's thickness here, but you just push it enough, and you want the gimmick to be able to move 180 degrees. That's important, okay? I'll show you why in just a moment. And I want it to be as loose as possible. So it's just like that. All right? And basically that's your complete gimmick, customized to the deck that you are going to use. And so now we will get into the performance. Okay, now let me show you the card box version. You can watch my full Lust performance on this DVD to see the exact way I used the gimmick to fool Penn and Teller. And in a moment, I'm going to show you that exact method, the one that I used on the show. But first, I want to show you an alternative handling for ringing in the gimmick, which is using the card box. It's a method I think most of you will decide to use since it fits more performance environments. I had been working on a method of hiding the gimmick using the card box, but I didn't have a perfect solution. And I was at the Magic Castle and showed my idea to James Chatier, an excellent mind reader from France. And James suggested making the hinge on the gimmick move 180 degrees. not something I had initially been doing. And this way, he saw that the gimmick could actually just simply rest on the card box. So thanks to James Chattier's brilliant idea, we can now use the gimmick and ring it into the deck simply from a card box, just like this. And this is the reason I had the black on the edge of the close-up pad, right on the edge of the gimmick right here, because that blends in with the close-up pad. And it's just sitting on the gimmick just like that, resting on the card box. And now, it's possible that when it's sitting there, it may stick out just a little bit like that, which is not too noticeable when it's on a table, but there is a solution to that. If you're concerned, if your gimmick is not going all the way down completely at a 45-degree angle, what you can do is you can take a little wee neodymium magnet. This is a very thin little neodymium magnet and a piece of black tape. You put the magnet on the tape, and in turn, I just simply have placed a little piece of tape right there, and as you can see, the tape is resting right here so that the magnet is right here. So whenever I put the metal shell, it will very quickly adhere solidly to the card box, just like that. So it's just a way of handling that little detail if you want to go that route. Okay? Now, you begin by setting up the gimmick, and we will do that with the X-Acto blade. And we slide the gimmick out just as I showed you at the very beginning. We don't have to oil it this time because it's already been oiled. And once we set the gimmick, 1, 2, and 3 strips, we put them in place just like that, and close them up just here. Okay, so now we do have these 3 strips which are hanging out a little bit, but the solution to that is just simply to fold the little tab back just like that, and the tab basically just covers the little strips and are sitting. I sometimes lock them in place like that so that it's just sitting like that. And I can then take the unshuffled deck that we prepared in the very beginning and put it inside the card box. Okay, now we're going to get into performance. I'll show you the version with the card box, and then I'll show you the version I did on Penn & Teller Fool Us, and you can choose to use whichever one you like. So to set up, we have the card box. We've folded down this flap just like that. It says marked cards. I've taken the deck of cards, which we've already given 5 Pharaoh shuffles. It says unshuffled 8 times, but no one can read that. And I place it inside the box. Now remember, this one also has the little magnetic dot right here. It's going to help attach the gimmick. And that goes in the box. And I close the box, but I leave this tab open. All right? Just fold it over just like that. Then I turn it face down and I place the shell right on top of the box. So this is what it looks like. So I can actually bring out the cards and I can say, have you ever seen a deck of marked cards? And I can show the cards like that. I can then take the cards in my hand and open them up, and I can dump out the cards. And as I place them on the table, they see the marks on the table, and that's where all the attention is drawn while I close the box, but I don't really close it. I just put the flap over just like that, and I set it down as I set these down so that now we've loaded the shell. It's already sitting right on top, and there are different ways you can just simply stick the box on the table, but essentially that's how I do it. You know, sort of setting it down. And so as I set this down, I say, can you see the little marks? All the attention is there. I just set this out of the way. And now we're ready to do the trick. So now I'm going to perform and teach you how to do Unshuffled, the classic version, and then we'll ring in the gimmick just at the end. Okay? So to do Unshuffled, I first start by showing the deck of cards all mixed up, red and black, hearts, clubs, diamonds, spades. Okay, I can do that in my hands, or I could spread them on the table and show them hearts, clubs, diamonds, spades, all the cards mixed. I always keep the unshuffled side toward the audience. And now we're going to have one card selected. So I'm going to riffle up my thumb, and automatically it clicks at the break because that's where the short card is. I catch my break with my little finger, and I now do either a dribble force, where I have them say stop, and I just drop all the cards above at the break whenever they say stop. On Penn and Teller, I did a riffle force, okay, because I didn't want a chance dropping the cards or anything like that on the show. I riffle up, and they said stop, and I just pick up at the break and show them the selected card. Or quite often, sometimes I'll use a classic force on this trick, which works really well, where I just get a break underneath the king and I perform a classic force, and it's a very fair selection. I could have done that on Penn and Teller, but I wasn't taking any chances. I was preventing anything from going wrong, and so I used the riffle force on that one. So once the card was selected, I place it back in the deck, square up the pack, and I explain I'm going to find their card, but I'm not going to shuffle the cards. I'm going to give the cards an unshuffle. I divide the deck exactly at half. 26, 26, I can tell by the weight, and then I give the cards a perfect out pharaoh, which of course means the ace stays on top. Now, I'm going to give you a little mini pharaoh lesson right now. If you don't do the pharaoh, you can at least learn how we do this, but you see after the first shuffle it says unshuffled 4 times. Now I should point out, when I did it on the show, for some reason the producers wanted me to keep my thumb in front of the edge of the cards so that when I did it on Penn and Teller Fool Us, I squared them up and then I showed it said unshuffled 4 times. Normally when I do the trick, I like to keep my thumb out of the way and square it up, and they see unshuffled appear magically. One thing I should point out, it's kind of interesting, if you square up the deck at the top first, you can actually see that word unshuffled one time, and then slowly it says unshuffled, 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 which I think is the most effective way of all. Now, one other little tip is when you do the trick, you can angle the cards back a little, and that increases the distance that people can see the effect. You know, from here, maybe about 10, 12 feet back. By here, I get about 15, 16 feet back, just by giving them a little angle, okay? But let's talk a little bit about the pharaoh shuffle, because we're going to do 3 pharaoh shuffles during the course of the trick. When doing a pharaoh shuffle, number 1, of course, you're breaking the cards exactly in half. Fortunately for this trick, you always break it at the same places. The first shuffle I just did there, I broke at the 5 of spades. Okay, and I can tell that that's exactly 1/2 when I hit the 5 of spades. The second shuffle is going to be the 3 of spades, and the last shuffle during the trick is going to be the 2 of spades. And those same cards will always be there. So during performance, 5, 3, and 2 of spades is all you really have to remember. Okay? Now, when performing the pharaoh, many people do it different ways. I teach it from the top down, which is why I use these Phoenix cards, because they shuffle and pharaoh very well from the top down. And I divide the deck and I square up the pack, creating a slight angle. If I were to really exaggerate it, you would see there's an A, but I'm not actually butting the cards together all at once. I'm actually more butting just the top cards of the deck. And I use my index finger to align the cards. So I can actually feel the cards right there, and I can tell that they are lined up perfectly, and then I can also visually check and make sure that that ace of hearts stays right on top and the cards go together. Now, it's a matter of pressure. It's a matter of pressure and angles, and you put pressure on and then you kind of release the pressure and the cards will blend together. It takes practice. This is not a trick you're going to do very, very quickly, okay? It can take months to really master the pharaoh shuffle and get comfortable enough to be doing this in front of an audience. 6 months is not out of the question. But it's a very advanced trick, but it's very effective. But again, the pharaoh shuffle, I believe the important thing is how you're holding the cards, okay? Notice where my thumb is, okay? And notice where my thumb on top is. If I'm too close like that, there's not enough give between these cards here for them to go together nicely. I need enough give and flexibility right there. If I'm holding them too far back, there's absolutely no control. Okay, I can't really control exactly how they're going together. So pay attention to where your thumbs are. About 1 inch is perfect for me, and that gives the cards enough flexibility but at the same time, it gives me enough control. That's the best tip I can give you on the shuffle. The other thing is, you're only aligning the top cards initially, and then they come down. So there's a little bit of a motion like this as you do the Pharaoh shuffle. Your hands will come down. And once you get the first ones to go in, then the others will slowly start to follow. Okay? So, but again, just remember, you have to divide the deck exactly. In this case, 3 of spades. I have my fingers to the right position. I also have, notice where my fingers are on the deck, 3 over here, 1 here, 1 here. I've completely controlled that pack. And here, I'm holding it fairly deep in my hand. That's also important. If I hold it way back here, there's no control. If I have it deep in my hand, I have the control I need. Okay? And now if you do pharaohs from the bottom, it's the same thing, except you're just simply lining them up on the bottom and they're going together from that direction. But again, I like them from the top down. I just feel I have more control. And so hopefully that gives you a little help with the Pharaoh shuffle. There's many different texts out there where you can actually learn the Pharaoh shuffle in detail, and I'd recommend those too, okay? Different people teach it different ways. But I feel this is a very natural way to hold the cards, and I'd recommend giving it a try, especially if you happen to use Phoenix cards or cards that shuffle from the top down. So we are now at this point where it says unshuffled 4 times, and I say to the audience, that means the cards have been unshuffled into 4 groups: hearts, clubs, diamonds, spades. So it makes sense, okay? Then I say I'll give the cards another unshuffle. I divide it to 3 of spades. I sometimes do this where I pretend to weigh the cards in my hand, and it just gets a little laugh. And then I give them another Pharaoh shuffle. Again, each time it's an out Pharaoh, which means you are keeping the ace of hearts on top. And once I do that, I can now square them up and show you that it now says unshuffled 2 times. Which means the cards have been unshuffled into 2 groups, all the red cards in one group and all the black cards in another. And if I give the cards one more unshuffle, see, there's the 2 of spades, I then take and give it one more unshuffle, just like that, and now notice I let the cards still stay jumbled, and I get my thumb out of the way and I slowly square it up, and this is the most magical moment of the trick. The deck is completely unshuffled. Okay, and now once it says unshuffled, I can then take and either spread the cards on the table and show they are unshuffled, ace through king in perfect order, or I can spread the cards in my hands. And if I spread them in my hands, I angled it up so that unshuffled stays toward the audience, and I then spread through the deck, just like that, and show. And sometimes I'll just go like this. I'll say ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen, king, hearts, clubs, diamonds, spades, just to kind of create the excitement. One other element of the trick is, while you're displaying the writing on the side of the cards, hold the deck like this. And if I have to, if I have people around me or I'm standing on an elevated trade show floor stand, I put my hand underneath. What does that do? Well, you can see it protects completely the writing on the back of the cards. No one has any idea that there's writing on the back of the cards because of how I hold my hands, and I cover that. So even if people are standing over there, they never see it because I do all the shuffles up this way, and whenever I turn it, my hand comes back here and I'm covering. So that basically is almost the end of the trick as far as the spectator is concerned. It says unshuffled, okay? Now then I say, oh, but wait, look, the cards are now in perfect order, and I prove they're all unshuffled. And then I say, but I have to find your card. Your card is in here somewhere. And I spread the cards in my hand, doing a spread, just a fan spread fan, and I turn them over. Now here's the interesting thing here. We've just reversed the side of the deck. This side says unshuffled. This side says the selected card, in this case the king of spades. But I don't want to just square them up. I want to displace them a little bit. I'm sort of shifting them just a little bit, just a few places. Say, your card is in here somewhere. I won't look for it because they're all in perfect order. And now I square up the deck. And look what happens when I square up the deck. Now it says king of spades, and it's facing the audience. But they don't realize that. And I turn it over, Okay, and now if I say, what was the name of your card, I can square up the cards here, and I could just square them up, or I can give them one more spring. I sometimes put my hand in front, covering the front. I square them up so that they don't see King of Spades, and I do this. I say, and what was your card? King of Spades? I'll give them one more shuffle. Now, of course, I'm not really shuffling the cards, but to a lay audience, the sound is the sound of a shuffle. Visually, that's the visual nature of a shuffle. They think the cards have been rearranged again whenever we spring cards. And so now all I have to do is square up the pack, and it says King of Spades, and that's the killer end of the trick. And they're shocked. Now, hey, I'll show you one little inside secret here that's kind of cool. Whenever I did it on Penn and Teller Fool Us, I didn't think of this. Some people watched the direction of the ace of spades, and they said, you know, the ace is now going in the other direction. So since then, now what I do is I do a little touch before I square it up one last time. When it's facing this direction, I will do a little bottom palm reverse, okay, just like that. And all I'm really doing is I'm taking the card into the bottom palm just for a second, and then I'm using a gambler's replacement where I put my finger above the card and I do that jog with, notice my thumb here and finger here are twisting the card around. So I square up the ace before I do the turnaround, so that when I do the turnaround at the very end, the ace is pointing in the same direction. Okay, I kind of wish I did that on Penn and Teller. It would have fooled some of the people watching. Okay, but now we're at the end. It says King of Spades, and as far as everyone is concerned, that is the end of the trick. Now, let's take it one step further. Let's ring in the kicker. Okay, now this, by the way, is not the way I did it on Penn and Teller. I've designed this way for you to make it a little easier to perform. I'm going to show you my Penn and Teller method too, though. At the end, it says King of Spades. I can then take and put the cards, and before I put the cards back in the box, I say, oh, wait, but look, if I give them one more shuffle, and I then give them one more perfect shuffle, I divided it at the King of Clubs, I say, take a look, because now all the cards have been separated, all the red cards from all the black cards. And basically it's just a little extra kicker to the trick as far as everyone is concerned. They now see a jumbled pattern here. And I could then take and pick up the box. And as I pick up the box, I can very quickly flip up that lip and say, before I put them in the box, what was the name of your card? And I could have a second card appear, or I could say, does this trick fool Penn and Teller? And there it is. So essentially, this is a different version. It's using the box to ring in the gimmick and actually incorporate the gimmick into the trick. Same thing I did on Penn and, well, I didn't do this version on Penn and Teller, but it's the same effect that I did on Penn and Teller. So again, just to review that, what you can do is you have it there. It's no, the gimmick is set though, and as you set it down, you say, before I put the cards back in the box, and all you have to do is move that up, just like that. And the little lip fits right around the cards, and then you square them up, and the words change, okay? And it can be done very, very quickly, and so that as you set them down, and you just do that and say, but before I put them in the box, what was your card? And they say the other card, or they say, oh, but it's happy birthday. And it says, and now you can have it changed to say happy birthday or whatever you want it to change. I sometimes, I think in your case, you probably would want to have a second word, maybe a second selection. And this would say 2 of spades here, so that you force both the 8 and the 2 of spades. Okay, and at the end of the trick, you say, oh, before we put them in the box, whoa, what was your card? Oh, your card was a 2 of spades. Let's see if we can get it. Boom, there it is, 2 of spades. And you've now found a second selection using the gimmick straight off the box. So anyway, that's the box version. I hope you like that, and we'll get into the Penn and Teller version in just a moment. Now, let's take a look at the actual method I did on the show Fool Us, the method that fooled Penn and Teller. On the show, I did not have the gimmick resting on top of the box. Actually, I had the gimmick hidden inside my close-up pad. Okay, I created a secret little pocket in the pad right here. And it was similar to the close-up pad I used on my coin trick, That's Ridiculous. It was an idea I published first in Steel and Silver, where I created a slot for coins, and other people have picked up on the idea. Now production pads are part of the magic market. But let's take a look at how I created the pad. It's fairly easy to do. You're actually just going to create a small little pocket. Now again, this is just if you're crazy, or as crazy as I am, and you want to go to the extra mile and create a way to fool someone with this little device. Okay? To do this, you need to start by taking a close-up pad and you peel back the upper layer. It's normally made up of multiple layers, about 3 different layers there, but you peel back the upper layer and there's a heavier rubber base, and if you're careful you can peel back a section of the fabric just for the purpose of creating this pocket. Now you only have to peel it back far enough so that you can have enough room for the gimmick. Okay, so eventually you end up with peeling this thin layer back, and you will have to pluck away any extra little material here so that you end up with a little chamber. Okay, and as I mentioned, there's excess rubber. You want to remove any of the excess rubber because you do want this to have a little bit of a chamber to sit in, a little lower, so that when that cloth is put back on top, it's not visible. Okay, now in addition to creating a little chamber here, and there's the chamber right here, okay, that's where it goes, I also like to line the pad with satin, okay, and then use rubber cement to attach it. The purpose of that is to make it easy for the gimmick to slide out, okay, and then you can use carpet tape or rubber cement to just simply adhere the top back to the pad. But remember, of course, you're not gluing on top of the gimmick, okay. And now, once that's done, I'll show you a couple little details on the pad I made here. It slides right in like this, okay. I also made it so that it fits right up against the edge, and 2 other little details I put was to create a little half moon right here that gives me the ability to feel as my fingers move down the pad. And I also put plexiglass here so I could create that half moon, okay. And I put little risers here. That's just simply to give the close-up pad a little extra lift so that I could make sure my finger could get underneath the close-up pad, okay. But because of that little half moon that is right here, I can feel as soon as my finger's there, I can feel that I'm securely touching the gimmick, okay. And I'm now going to slide out the gimmick, and thanks to the little lip on the gimmick, I'm going to slide out the gimmick, and it's going to be slid underneath the deck of cards, which I'll show you in a moment when we do the actual performance, okay? So that's the important thing. The gimmick can now slide out very easily. When I did it on Penn & Teller, I actually had the gimmick be completely black because I wasn't using the top of the card box, and it matched the mat on the tablecloth that I was working on. But quite honestly, this works just as well because this gets hidden by the red back of the card. So when it slides out, you still can't see it, whether it's red or whether it's black. Okay, so to set up for the performance, I first set the gimmick by moving the 3 strips, creating a jumbled pattern on the gimmick. And then I slide the gimmick into the pocket so that the metal is just touching the side. Now on the show, I also placed a Sharpie marker right here on the close-up pad, right beside the metal edge. This helped cover that gimmick in case there was an overhead camera that could come down and see it, okay, and see that sharp view. And then during the show, I actually set the marked box after I took the cards out of the box. I set the box first in the center of the table, and then I opened them up, set them down, and I set the box here. And I picked up the pen and told how I marked each card with the pen, one at a time, okay? And again, you can see what's happening here is this card box is covering the gimmick from anybody looking from that side. Okay, so those are all the setup things that I did as I was preparing to go on Penn & Teller Fool Us. Okay, now I set the box of marked cards in the center of the deck, the pen right here covering that little lip of the edge of the gimmick, and we were ready to go. Now, there was one last detail. There was always the chance that at the end of this trick, someone will ask to examine the cards. It does not happen often, but sometimes, maybe once every 6 months it does, and I'm always prepared. I always have a switch deck of cards in my right coat pocket that read 8 of hearts on one side and are blank on the other side. There's nothing written on that side. Now, as I mentioned, it only happens once or twice a year that someone asks to examine the deck, but if it does, I'm always ready. So as I was going to get ready to go on Penn and Teller Fool Us, I was wondering what would I do if Penn and Teller asked to examine the deck at the end of the trick. I honestly did not think they would ask to examine the cards, but if they did, I had to be ready just in case. I decided I would treat Penn and Teller the same way I treat every layman. I would act a little nervous and then reach in the pocket and let them examine the deck. The problem was I was throwing a big curveball at them by adding a third word change, and they already knew the method of the original trick, so whenever I let them examine the deck, it had to make perfect sense. So I placed the switch deck in my right coat pocket, just like I always do. But this switch deck was designed just for Penn and Teller. You see, it read Penn and Teller on one side of the deck, and of course the cards were now all separated, red and black, just like you see on the show tape. But the words were a little different because it said Penn and Teller on this side, but on this side of the deck it said King of Spades, 1 Pharaoh shuffle in. And that's why it had to look exactly as it would if I had just given the cards one more Pharaoh shuffle, so that when they examined it, everything looked normal. Now, I had no idea if I was going to need this deck, but it just so happened I did. So let's just walk through the handling I did on Penn and Teller, and I'll show you how I added the gimmick to the cards and how I switched in the deck at the end of my set. Switch deck is in the pocket, and I'm ready to begin. I began by, now of course you can see the full performance just by watching the Penn and Teller show video on this DVD, but I'm just going to walk through the handling and show you how I added the gimmick to the deck to fold them. I began by pointing out that the cards were marked as I opened up the box, and I showed the little marks on the cards. I said that I marked each individual card with a Sharpie pen. And as I picked up the Sharpie to indicate the marks on the deck, I actually set the box right beside the gimmick, just like that. So that, again, that covered the gimmick from this side. Okay? And then I mentioned that I marked each card individually with the Sharpie, and I put the pen away. Now, this again covers the visibility of the gimmick, and it gives me a reason for having the pen on the table to begin with. And then I performed the trick. I had one card selected. I first showed the cards were all mixed up, red and black. I had one card selected from the deck by doing the riffle force or dribble force and placed back in the deck. And I then performed the classic version of Unshuffled, giving it one shuffle and showing that it says Unshuffled 4 times. I then gave it another Unshuffle or Pharaoh shuffle and showed that it said Unshuffled 2 times. And then I gave it one more Pharaoh shuffle and showed that it read Unshuffled. And then I took the cards and I spread them on the tabletop across the mat, just like this. And everyone could see with the overhead camera that they were in perfect order, ace through king. This part is very important because you'll notice the way I pick them up is to pick up the card and come across the table from the left to the right, which causes their eyes to get used to moving in that direction as I pick up the cards. And I made sure I keep this side of the cards toward the audience, so it still said Unshuffled. I then did the same classic version where I spread them out and I said to Penn, but you selected a card, it's somewhere here in the pack. I won't look for it face up, I'll find it face down. What was the name of your card? And I squared them up, gave them one more shuffle, and he said King of Spades, and I squared them up and showed the King of Spades. And that was the end of the trick. And it's interesting because watching Penn and Teller at that moment, I could literally see Penn just simply relax. He smiled, he laughed, he knew the end of the trick, and he was right there with me. And then I said, but Penn, Teller, obviously it's apparent I can find any card in the deck that I want to find. And I then started to give the cards another shuffle. And exactly at that moment, I looked at Penn's face, and they even showed on the camera. He started to get a quizzical look as to where is he going with this? And I realized that he knew something was coming. And I said, it's apparent I can find any card in the deck, and I can put these cards in any order I want. And I give it one more Pharaoh shuffle. That one is broken at the King of Clubs. And I say, if I give them one more shuffle, look, I've now separated all the red cards from all the black cards. And as I say that, I move the box out of the way, and I overlap the close-up mat just by about an inch and a half. And I'm right on top of the gimmick right now. So it just happens in one motion where it's just a very innocent move where I just move that out of the way so that I can spread the cards. Now remember, the time before I spread them up here. This time I'm coming back and I'm going to spread the cards, and they're separated, all the red cards from all the black cards. And that was a little kicker surprise. And I could see Penn and Teller sort of wondering, he thinks that's going to fool us? You know, I mean, that's an obvious effect that happens if you give the cards one more Pharaoh. But here's what fooled them. I then pick up the cards, and as I pick up the cards, I slide the ace aside just a little bit, and I now push it against the table. So look at the distance between the ace and the gimmick. It's only about 1 inch. So that as I come back here, I'm sliding these cards like this. Their eyes are following in the direction of the movement. What I do is I slide one card sideways, and if you watch very closely on the tape, you can see me do that. That's what the physicist and the engineer picked up. And I then get to this point, and as I come and slide the cards off, I'm literally just sliding the gimmick right under the cards, just like that, in one very clean, smooth motion. And all they see is a jumbled pattern right here. And especially from the distance they were at, you can't really tell the difference between the jumbled pattern here or the jumbled pattern here. So that's exactly where we were as I picked it up, and I said, but the final question is, did this trick fool? And as I squared it up, I said, Penn and Teller. And they saw the name change, just like that. So again, just to review here, if I put this back inside, okay, now again, I didn't reset the gimmick, but by spreading the cards out like this, and by pulling one a little bit farther sideways so that I can get it closer to the edge of the mat, I can lever it up, and I can then turn them over. Now notice here, right here, this is the reason I have that little moon, half moon, cut into the plexiglass that I attach to the bottom of my close-up pad, because I can feel exactly where I want my finger to be. Okay, I wasn't taking chances. And I can also feel the top of the gimmick here. Okay, so as I come across here, I'm sliding one card over a little bit. I have to have enough coverage there. And as I come back here, I'm just sliding the gimmick out under the close-up pad all at the same time. It happened very, very fast. I happened to hit it very well on the show, a nice smooth motion, and it wasn't visible. And by the time my hand comes up here, I'm in front of the cards. And remember, of course, this is jumbled now because I have set the gimmick. And I square it up and I say, did this trick fool Penn and Teller? And we do the square up, and that's where it is. Okay? And that's the part, when the moment this appeared, I could see Penn's face go, you know, he was shocked. He had no idea that was coming. And now, I did one final thing though, okay? I knew there was that chance that they were going to ask to examine the cards. So again, if you watch the tape very closely, you'll see I take the cards in my pocket and I turn intentionally, quarter turn to the right, just like that, so that I have this hand is my upstage hand. And I'm now going to take and put this apparently inside my pocket, but I don't. What I actually did was I kept my elbow so it didn't move out, and I slowly slipped this inside my pants pocket, okay? So essentially that just went right in my pants pocket as I quickly turned. So just to show you the gimmick, and of course I have jeans on now so they're not as open, but I turned and I just slipped this inside my suit pants pocket. They fell in very quickly because it was a loose fitting pair of pants, and I immediately angled my hand up into here, so that by the time I walked around the front of the table, okay? I walked around the front of the table, you saw me take my hand out, and I patted the deck twice, just as if to make sure I put it in there, and intentionally calling attention to the fact that that's where the cards were, which actually in Penn and Teller's mind, it worked. They thought that's where the cards were. I then stood there, and we did the little interview. And at one point during the interview, Penn said, could we examine the cards? And I intentionally acted a little nervous, and I said, you want to examine the cards? And I reached in my pocket, and because there's only one deck in my pocket, I could easily bring them out. There was no fumbling with two decks. I brought it out, and I held it, and I said, you can examine the cards. It's going to tell you something, not everything, but it's going to tell you something. And he took the cards, and he examined the cards. I could see he looked at the back and noticed it said King of Spades, one shuffle in. This said Penn and Teller, and as far as they were concerned, they were looking at the exact deck that I just got done. So essentially, yes, I did switch decks, but I switched decks at the end of the trick, not during the trick, to answer anyone's question. So a deck switch was involved, but it was way after the trick was done. So that's the part that fooled Penn and Teller. Well, I hope you enjoyed learning my unshuffled kicker. I had a lot of fun designing it. I had a blast doing it on the Penn and Teller Fool Us show, although it was a little nerve-wracking. And I had a blast teaching it to you here. But I wanted to give you one extra special bonus, and that is, if you don't do the Pharaoh Shuffle, how can you use this gimmick? I'm going to show you right now. I think you'll like it. Here's an idea. You take a deck of cards, and you put a pattern on the deck of cards. It can say anything at all, two of spades or whatever you want it to say. In this case, I'm going to write two of spades and then shuffle the cards up. Now, I've also made a few other modifications. Number one, this deck has nothing written on this side. It only has words written on this side. And then I take the two of spades and I short one corner of the two right here so that I can easily get to that corner, and I can force that two very easily, just like before. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take an extra two of spades from a different deck, and I'm going to put a little dot pattern on one side, and I'm going to put that in my marked card box, just like that, and close up the flaps, and we're ready to go. Remember, we keep this one open because we're going to use our shell, and we're going to use our box method for the shell. And this is sitting right here on top of the box. And now you can bring these out. You can say they're marked cards. You can do the same thing as we did in the very beginning. And you show there's little marks on the edge of the deck. This time, though, you can actually hand the deck out and have someone shuffle it. Or you can shuffle it. You can ask them, oh, please do me a favor. Make sure you keep the marks on one side, just all on one side, because I only marked it on one side. You shuffle the pack. When you get the cards back from them, if you run your thumb up the back, you will be able to find the two of spades very easily. Okay, and now we're going to force the two of spades. So I have a lady come a little closer to me. I ask her to say stop. She says stop. And whenever she says stop, I let her look at her two of spades. And she places it back in the pack. I can even give her the cards and say mix them up. Completely out of my control. And once that's done, I can take the cards back from her. And then I set them on the box just for a second, and I say, I have a question. Are you right-handed or left-handed? And she says, well, I'm right-handed. I say, well, hold out your right hand like this, and hold out your left hand like this. And I say, I'm going to put the box, and I want you to hold it between your hands. So her hands are right here, and I explain to her I'm going to put the box between her hands, and as I pick it up, I immediately do the flip, and I hand her the box. And she puts her hands behind the box. Now notice where my hand is. My hand's kind of covering this box, the front of the deck. She can't really see that at this point. And I say, I want you to hold on to the box carefully. I'm going to try to find your card. What was the name of your card? And she names her card, and I might step back a few feet. I won't do it here because we're filming on camera, but I normally, when I do this, I like to step back a few feet, just giving a little more distance between this, and I say, I'll try to do it from a distance. What was the name of your card? She says the two of spades, and I square them up, and there's her card, the two of spades, just like that. And then I immediately say, but shake the box. And as she shakes the box, she hears something in the box. And while all the attention is on the box, I'm going to do the same exact switch I did on Penn and Teller Fool Us, because before the trick, I have set in my pocket a switch deck that says 2 of spades. Okay? And not only that, I also have put them in black order and red order. Just a little final touch. And I've also, you remove the 2 of spades, I should take that out, from this deck. So this deck in your pocket has no 2 of spades in it at all. It's a switch deck that's just for the purpose of switching. So when I square them up and say shake the box, she shakes the box, I say open the box. All the attention is on the box. I put this deck in my pocket as I turn, and immediately turn around and make it look like I just put the cards away right here. And she will open it up and she'll find her 2 of spades inside the box. At that point, I can either just reach in my pocket and kind of bring these out casually and set them on the table and say, but not only that, we put the cards in order. Black cards and red cards, but your 2 of spades has to go right about there. And I put it back in. And sometimes I just simply set the cards down on the table and let them pick it up, and they say, oh, wait a minute, look, they're all in order. Oh, yeah, they're in order. And there's a 2 of spades missing, and it fits right here. So I let them discover that a lot of times too. But this at least gives you an idea of how you can use the gimmick without even doing a faro shuffle and still have a very novel card selection found and end up inside the spectator's hands. So, hey, well, there you have my latest version of Unshuffled with the Unshuffled Kicker. I've had a blast working on this trick, designing it, coming up with the idea, and teaching it to you here. So we've worked very hard to make sure you have a quality product. The gimmick is well designed. We think you'll have a good time with it. I'm really kind of curious to see what your ideas will be with it. I'm sure you have ideas, possibly even better than mine.